Afternoon.
Afternoon.
And you are?
Joanna Dennehy.
Right.
Yeah. Right, so what am I out for? Attempted murder and murder.
You've been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and murder.
Could be worse. Am I cheering now? Yes.
Good. We like a cheery, Joanne.
Yeah.
Even though I am strict.
Would you be cheery if you got for attempted murder and murder?
I wouldn't, but...
No, but I was a smiler.
She didn't have a plan. She didn't care. She just wanted to kill as many people as possible.
In the space of just 10 days last spring, she murdered 3 men and then attempted to murder 2 others.
You've got Rose West, and you've got Myra Hindley, and of course now Jo Dennehy.
People are fixated with this case because Joanna Dennehy is female. Stretch was there pretty much supporting Dennehy, who was the driving force behind everything.
These were awful, awful attacks in broad daylight to innocent members of the public going about their business, walking their dogs.
Joanna Dennehy has taken over our lives and has callously created a hole that cannot be filled.
Nobody could have predicted that that beautiful blue-eyed girl would have gone on to be a monster.
A mother who murdered 3 men and attempted to kill 2 others in Cambridgeshire has become only the 3rd woman in Britain to receive a whole life sentence.
For Joanna Dennehy, it's absolutely the right thing that she won't come out of prison.
The motivations for her was seeking that infamy. As well as controlling other people, and some people being put under a spell, she wanted to be known for murdering, for causing these horrific crimes.
Joanna Dennehy is the most dangerous woman British criminal history's ever known.
Murder, it's nothing. It's like going down for Sunday roads.
I had a call to look at a missing from home report. Kevin Lee, who was a resident of Peterborough, he'd been reported missing by his family. He hadn't returned home that evening. They reported that they'd been looking for Kevin at the places that they knew where he was likely to be, and at one address, his vehicle had been seen leaving at speed. The police subsequently found that vehicle on fire across at Yaxley. Which was the point at which someone said, hang on, we need somebody to have a look at this because these 2 events together make this something of concern. The police forced entry to the property at 11 Rolleston Garth. That was the area from which Kevin Lee's vehicle had seemed to be speeding off. Within the premises, they did identify some blood staining, which elevated their cause for concern for Kevin's welfare. On the Saturday morning, a dog walker discovered a body in a remote area of Newborough. It was in a ditch. The body was positioned in a way which suggested that it had been either dumped from a car or potentially staged. The circumstances in which the body was found caused me to think, well, how has the body got there? Is that the scene of a crime or more likely to be a deposition site? subsequently, that body was identified as that of Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee had died as a consequence of multiple stab wounds to the upper part of his body. We're in Middle Road in Newbern, and just here you'll see the outline of a ditch. Heavily overgrown now because of the time of year, but it was in this ditch that Kevin Lee's body was found on the Saturday morning. This is an ideal spot, I think, for somebody looking to dispose of a body and not have it discovered for a period of time. It's a really remote area. At those early stages, we had no idea who was responsible for Kevin's death. There was every chance that, with good and methodical investigation, we were going to be able to trace Kevin Lee's movements and, as a consequence, find out who he was in company with and, hopefully, who was responsible for his death. There was a consideration that the crime could have been sexually motivated. When we were aware that Kevin had gone missing and we started to find out a lot more about his background and his lifestyle, officers were following numerous lines of inquiry. The inquiries that were made identified that Kevin Lee was due to meet a woman on the day that he went missing. So it was a combination of his movements and other data, including phone data, which identified Joanna Dennehy. Joanna Dennehy had an extensive criminal history. She'd been in prison previously. She had committed offences of dishonesty and was known to the police generally within the Peterborough area, but as a lower-level criminal. She was a tenant of Kevin Lee. So we established that he may have been in a relationship with Joanna Dennehy. Another individual also in the vicinity at the time that Joanna Dennehy is believed to have met Kevin Lee was Gary Stretch. Gary Stretch was also a well-known criminal figure within Peterborough. He had an extensive criminal past, lots of offences of dishonesty, periods of time in prison. When we were looking to locate Joanna Dennehy, she had gone missing and Gary Stretch had gone missing at the same time. Because of that, Gary Stretch and Joanna Dennehy were identified as clear suspects. Ultimately, a decision was made to go very public with those two individuals being wanted for the murder because they were incredibly distinctive. Gary Stretch was over 7 foot tall. Joanna Dennehy had a tattoo of a star on her face. We were desperate to try and locate them, and we're doing everything we possibly could to find them. And we had high hopes that by putting their details out to the media, they would be quickly identified and located.
I knew Gary from prison. He was a friendly chap. I wouldn't say like a bodybuilder's physique, but 7'7". I mean, his hands were like buckets. He's a gentle giant. He was in for doing silly things like burglaries, which he couldn't fit through windows. Odd things, and then he met her. About 9 o'clock that morning, the local cop come up to me and said, "Oh, you know that Gary's on the run for murder?" I thought, "Really?" I get a phone call off like a friend I know, saying, "I've got some stuff for you. Fancy meeting you in my house?" I've gone down there about 20 minutes later on my push bike and I've opened the door and Dennehy's answered it. And she stank. I mean, like as if they'd been living rough. She said, "You must be Mark." I've walked into the front room and Gary's stood there and I thought, yeah, I knew I was in trouble then. And then she just pulled a knife out of her bra. He was caked in blood. When she pulled that knife out, and then her attitude and Gary's attitude, he just went like a statue. And he said in the kitchen, "Look, Mark, you have to do what she says or she will kill you." And I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? Yeah. And then I said to Gary, he said, "Gary, what, you really killed someone?" And that's when Joanna Dennehy said, "No, Mark, he's the taxi driver, I do the killing." Gary said to me, "Look, Mark, I need some money." Well, apparently they'd stolen some stuff and Gary couldn't get rid of it. The table was full of TVs, iPads, iPhones, and these things were brand spanking new right then. They were worth quite a lot of money. It was worth a good £3,000–4,000. He just knew that I knew people in Herford who would buy it instantly. And he said, "Look, Mark, sell this stuff for me." So I started making a few texts. And about 20 minutes later, I got a text back saying, "Meet me in Hereford, I'll buy the whole lot of you." There was no way out for me there. I couldn't go for Gary, he could have snapped me in half. I couldn't go for her, because she was quite happily waving the knife around. I couldn't get out. So I arranged to meet in Tesco's on the outskirts of Hereford. And whilst I was in the car, I was thinking, right, let's see if I can get them ambushed, let's see if I can get hold of the police. They'd stolen a camera, and they were taking photos all the way from Peterborough, all the way to Herefordshire. On the way to Hereford, she was taking photos of the Black Mountains and the black and white houses. You've seen that photo of me. Yeah, what you don't realise, Gary is holding me down. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? 10 minutes after we got in the car, Gary was putting his foot down. And then she said to Gary, "Get me to Hereford, I'm going to kill some people." Necking his whiskey down, flashing the knife out, waving it around. And she kept going, "I want a cigarette, I want a cigarette." And then as soon as you got up the hill and then take the next left, there's a shop immediately. We pulled in. I thought, oh, here's my chance. I'll go out, go into the shop, tell her to ring the police. But then she didn't trust me, so she followed me in immediately. She was right behind me. It looks like she's hugging me. She's not hugging me. She's got the knife, like in my back like that. So I've got the tobacco. She's opened the till, and that's what I thought. Dennehy's going to jump the counter and rob her. And she started flirting with her. You got a nice bottom. You got beautiful hair. You've got a real slim body. And then we got back into the car, and then 30 seconds later, she's attacked the first bloke.
During the weekend, we had fairly significant breakthrough. There was a shoplifting at a service station in Norfolk. A police officer attended there, and when they looked at the CCTV, they saw two individuals very much fit in the description of Dennehy and Stretch.
My name's Paul Williamson. I was a senior investigating officer in Hereford. The shoplifting incident in Norfolk was a key breakthrough. What I remember distinctly from the CCTV is that the Vauxhall Astra vehicle pulls up onto the forecourt. Joanna Dennehy darts out of the passenger seat, and then a shoplifting offence is committed by her, reported to the police, and then the link is made with that vehicle.
So having identified the licence plate of the car, we were then in a position to use CCTV and ANPR cameras to identify the location of the vehicle as it moved across the region.
She was so agitated and so wanting to kill someone. So I just thought, look, let's just get them on the road. If she's on the road, she ain't killing anybody. And then she said to Gary, find me a victim, no women, no children. I want a man with a dog. And then we've got about 100 foot. This man with his dog is walking from the right-hand side over to the left. Gary said, would he do? Then she said, yep, he'll do. Stop the car. She's got out. Then she said something, and he's turned back around, and that's when she just went into a frenzy. It must have been 20 times, easily. Me and Gary have had a verbal. I was signed up for this. I've been lured into it. Gary, what are you doing to me? He turned around, gripped me on the shoulder. He said, Mark, you just have to let her do it. This is what she does. He didn't take his hand off my shoulder until he drove off. But there was no way out for me. Absolutely no way out for me. And don't forget, even though in my head it lasted 10 minutes, she was back in the car within 3, maybe 4 minutes. It was quick. So by the time I was thinking about getting out, she was already back in the car. I'm thinking, oh, well, someone's got to make a phone call. We're going to get stopped at the traffic lights. We're going to get held up on the bridge. I honestly thought the bloke was dead. And then she just literally got back in and said, find me another one.
This road here is the road that Joanna Dennehy and Gary Stretch were travelling along in the vehicle with Mark Lloyd in the back of the vehicle. As they were travelling down the road, Gary Stretch pointed out the victim that we now know as Mr. Bereza on the left-hand side and said words something to the effect, will he do? The car pulled over. Joanna Dennehy got out of the car and inflicted a really, really serious stabbing attack on Mr. Bereza. So vicious was the attack that Mr. Bereza put his arm up to try and defend himself, and the blow was so significant he actually broke a bone in his arm. So it was a really, really vicious and completely random attack. He's a retired firefighter, he was a postman. You'd often see Robin running. He was a runner, he was a member of a running club. So his face was very familiar to me. The whole events were incredibly shocking, but the fact that in some way I kind of got a personal connection to Mr. Bereza as somebody I knew locally made it even more shocking. My gut instinct was it was drugs related. I had no other information. But alongside of that, I am thinking, this is school holidays, this is a nice day, there are loads of children and families out on the streets when perhaps normally they would be in school. So I didn't know what was going to unfold, but that was really, really forefront of my mind, that we needed to get hold of this really, really quickly.
Mr. Robin Bereza, he was stabbed 3 times in total, had defensive injuries, a fracture to his rib and defensive injuries to his right arm as he's tried to fend off Joanna. And then he manages to basically escape, walk back home, where he reports it to his father-in-law, and the ambulance is called and the emergency service response comes in then.
Mr. Bereza described to us a star tattoo on the cheek of his attacker, which was a really, really key piece of information and enabled us to bring this together very quickly. So after Joanna Dennehy had stabbed Mr. Bereza 3 times, she got back into the car and they just callously drove off towards the city centre.
All she kept saying was, I need to get my fun. That was fun. I want another one. He's got to have a dog. He's got to have a dog. She's going on about, get me one, get me one, get me one. She's pulled the knife out the bra. By this time, she's getting ready, because Gary's saying we're getting closer to where the dog walkers are. The bloke's walking from the left down towards the footpath. She's got out and it was brutal. Caught him totally by surprise. There was no turning around. Bang, 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 bang. Then he was on the floor. She's then gone on top of him. Bang, 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 bang. 30 plus. Maybe more. Yeah, I mean, it was frenzied. That was horrific. The trail of blood was unbelievable.
This is Golden Post, quiet residential area, and this is the location at which John Rogers was attacked. John Rogers was here or hereabouts with his dog. Joanna inflicted an incredibly violent attack on Mr. Rogers. A significant number of stab wounds to his back. A really, really significant wound across his abdomen, which was really, really severe. And of course, he was injured so badly that he pretty well collapsed where he'd been attacked.
He had lacerated bowels, lacerated kidney, and then at one stage, Joanna turns John onto his front and repeatedly starts stabbing him on the back. It is a truly ferocious attack, and by this stage, pools of blood are forming around him. He's drifting in and out of consciousness. He's pleading with her to stop. The distinctive phrase that I remember said that, "Oh, look, you're bleeding, I've got to do it some more," and continues the stabbing.
Having attacked John Rogers, and in reality, in my mind, I think Joanna Dennehy thought that she was leaving him for dead. As an additional twist of fate, she stole John Rogers' dog that he had there with him. Took it in the car. Goodness knows what the reason for that. It was almost like a final indignity. Stabbed a man, left him for dead, and then you've taken his dog as well.
She put the dog in the back seat with me with the leash and collar on, and he was covered in blood from the head to the neck. And I just tried calming it down because it was shaking like a leaf. And I'm thinking that was just something out of a horror movie.
until the point at which she committed these very, very serious attacks, she was a petty minor criminal. There was nothing about what she'd done, either it was non-crime or a criminal history, that could have given anybody an indication of what she was about to do. We found nothing unusual about Joanna Dennehy's upbringing.
Joanne grew up in Harpenden. Joanne had a stable, loving upbringing. Her dad, Kevin, was a security guard. Her mum, Kathleen, was a retail manager. Her parents owned a 4-bedroom house.
Mother was very, very loving to her, and they wanted the best for Jo. I mean, there was no doubt about it.
Joanne had a sister called Maria. They were really close, they got on really well. She was a really girly girl. She used to love dressing up in her mum's clothes, doing her hair and makeup. She went to a nice school, Roundwood Park School. People would have been, you know, happy to get their child into that secondary school.
The interesting thing about Jo is she's very eloquent. She writes beautifully. Not a spelling mistake on the horizon. Grammar, syntax, everything's perfect with her, you know, beautifully presented on the page. Very cool, calm, educated girl.
There weren't really any signs in her early childhood that she was going to be problematic. She was just a typical sort of Harpenden teenager, really. She'd hang around the park with friends and do things like have a sneaky drink of alcohol or a smoke, those kind of things.
Around about the age of 14, this is when the alcohol and the drugs started to come into her life, and she started meeting some fairground workers that were in Harpenden. They started giving her a drink and some drugs. And I'm talking hard drugs, and I'm talking hard liquor.
She ran away from home 8 times, and every time the police would bring her back.
Rebellious at school, parents on her back all the time, trying to bring her back. She wanted to escape that. She wanted to break free. And then she moved with John Traynor. John Traynor, he was 21 at the time, she was 15. And they started living in a DOS bed-sits, mixing with a lot of very, very rough people. And of course it got worse and worse.
Joanne had her first baby at 17.
She had 2 children. She never cooked, she never cleaned. So she used John Traynor as a sort of house husband, for him to babysit while she went out with her other boyfriends and getting drunk and coming back smashed out of her head in front of John Traynor and the babies, and sticking a big dagger through the floor because he was upset about it. He was terrified. That's when he fled with the child.
John decided that it was not good for the children to be around Joanne at all, and took them off, and he brought them up as a single dad. That was then the catalyst for Joanne to just really go off the rails. Nobody could have predicted that that beautiful blue-eyed girl would have gone on to be a monster.
These were awful, awful attacks. In broad daylight to innocent members of the public, going about their business, walking their dogs. There was no connection between Mr. Rogers and Mr. Bereza, no connection at all that we've been able to establish between those who attacked him and Mr. Rogers. He just was in the wrong place at the wrong time and fell victim to this really, really vicious attack by Joanna Dennehy.
John was 56 or 58 at the time and was in ill health. It had been for some time. But he was a gent, his wife was lovely, and, you know, very caring of Archie as well.
I mean, I'm not saying the first one was bad, it was bad, but the second one, as if she'd gone up another level then. And she just went absolutely unfair use to that bloke. He crawled another 30 foot to the footpath. And then she's grabbed the dog, got back in, and then drove back up towards Tesco's. And by this time, I'm hearing multiple sirens. I'm thinking that's it now. We're not going to get any further.
Police response is huge, as it would be and should be for these types of incidents. And very quickly, you got uniformed police response officers and detectives, local detectives, turning out to hunt down Joanna and Gary. Within 20 minutes of the second attack on John, they've gone to try and sell the stolen goods nearby. It's just at the back of the Oval. Oval Shops is the scene, set back off the main Belmont Road.
The attack of John Rogers has actually been very close to the Oval. Amongst my team are a group of experienced detectives. So their gut instinct was to get to the Oval, that there's likely to be something going on there.
At the back of there, the Vauxhall Astra is parked and Joanna Dennehy is inside with Archie the dog.
On this occasion, those officers faced the highest level of risk. They knew that they were going to arrest somebody who had just tried to kill 2 members of the public on the street. That was the highest degree of bravery to step forward and potentially face that confrontation.
I expected her to put a fight up or pull a knife, or no, she very calmly, don't get me wrong, she had, surrounded, she very calmly got out the car, put her hands out, then put in the back of the police van. That was it.
They placed her under arrest. She offered no resistance to that, and she offered no threat to those officers.
Joanna Christina Dennehy.
Joanna, have you been in custody before, Joanna?
Yes.
Okay, is it Mrs. Ms?
Miss.
Well, Miss.
Miss.
Okay, what's your surname again, please?
Dennehy, D-E-N-N-E-H-Y.
Joanna, how much have you had to drink today?
Half bottle of whiskey this morning. Expensive stuff. £8 bottle.
Given the severity of what she's just inflicted on 2 innocent members of the public in the street, her behaviour was bizarre, really.
Yeah. But am I so sorry? Yeah. Am I cheery now? Yes.
Good. We like cheery, Joanna.
Yeah.
Even though I am strict.
Would you be cheery if you were up for attempted murder and murder?
I wouldn't, but...
No, but I was just smiling.
On the video footage, she can clearly be seen flirting with officers in the custody block, which is incredibly unusual.
I don't need a t-shirt, Corey. This is amazing.
Looks good.
Thanks, Matt. That makes me feel so good.
Good.
Real sexy.
Sure.
You're so tiny. Oh, thank you. Tiny. I've never been called tiny. I feel really flattered now. Thanks. You're welcome. That's lovely. Not bad for a murderer. It's a good one, actually.
What you can't see on the footage is I'm in the next booking area, if you know what I mean. And I could hear her going on about eyebrows. It could be worse. It's like having a Sunday dinner
You're ready to 65, right? It's all right.
Yeah, I'll pluck them.
You go right up.
Real
strict diver.
Strict.
Up and down. Strict diver. Murder, something. So going down for Sunday Road? Easy.
I think that just goes to show how narcissistic she was. She was more concerned about how she was being perceived by others at that time, in that moment, rather than the very significant trauma she'd caused to so many people.
Laughing her head off, as if it's all one big happy party to her.
In the time that she was on the run, they likened herself to Bonnie and Clyde with Gary, and clearly I think one of the motivations for her was seeking that infamy. As well as controlling other people and some people being put under her spell, she wanted to be known for murdering, for causing these horrific crimes.
Because there's 2 cell suites in Herford. I've gone to the left-hand one. She's gone to the right one. Last thing I remember of her was literally as she's been tipped over and saying, singing in the rain. And that's the last I saw of her.
What did they get arrested for?
Okay, due to the nature of the offences for which you've been arrested,
Which were?
You've been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and murder. Okay, due to those the nature of those arrests, officers clearly have got some inquiries to do and an investigation to conduct.
So when the team received the call to say that Dennehy had been arrested, it was a huge relief. There'd been a lot of effort that had gone into trying to locate her, and finally she was in custody. The day after Dennehy's arrest, I was in the Major Crime Unit office and there was a phone call. I went over, spoke to a control room operator who told me that 2 further bodies had been found in a ditch. I was conscious that Kevin Lee's murder could be linked to the murders of these 2 individuals. If that were to be the case, we would be dealing with a serial killer.
Am I meeting my clothes back?
At the moment, they'll be seized as part of the investigation.
So I'm going to go to jail on my mum with nothing.
We don't need to go to jail yet, do we, Joanna?
I do.
Well, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
No, I will.
So we're now on a farm track which runs from Thorney Dyke, which is a couple of miles northeast of Peterborough. So the bodies were located here, in this ditch, and they were found by a farmer who was walking in the area that morning. There were 2 bodies lying adjacent to each other, not next to each other in the ditch, but long ways along that ditch. And I could see from the position that I was stood in that they appeared to be the bodies of 2 men. Some days previously, we had Kevin Lee's body found in a ditch as well. And so there was every chance that these matters were connected. One of these individuals in the ditch was identified as Lukasz Slaboszewski. He had been in a relationship with Joanna Dennehy in the days and weeks leading up to his death. Lukasz was a Polish national living in Peterborough, and some days before it is believed that he was murdered, he met Joanna Dennehy in Peterborough, and it's believed that he struck up a relationship with her. Lukasz was last seen on the 19th of March at a cash point in Peterborough, and thereafter there's no further sign of him, no trace.
Lukasz, if anything, was quite naive. He thought he met a nice girl and, you know, she invited him round to the house and he was excited and he told his sister, look, I'm happy, I've met somebody. A pretty little girl with a star on her face is flirting with him. He went there in all innocence.
Dennehy lured him across to 11 Rolleston Garth and there murdered him by stabbing him in the chest.
As he's bleeding to death, she's got Gary to make her a sandwich. Apparently in her eyes, they deserved it.
There was forensic evidence at Rolleston Garth which proves that he was killed there. There was never a motive firmly established for the murder of Lukasz. It was clear that he had been texting Dennehy prior to his death, and the suggestion is that they were in some form of relationship. After Lukasz was stabbed at Rolleston Garth, that for a period of time his body was kept in a wheelie bin close to the premises. And I've got absolutely no doubt that she couldn't have achieved that on her own, and I strongly believe that Stretch was responsible with her for putting that body in the bin. When Lukasz's body was in the bin, Dennehy had been bragging about the fact that she'd killed him. She even showed a young 14-year-old girl the body in the bin. We're aware that Joanna Dennehy was familiar with this area and had come here before, this general area, and probably when it was time for her to decide where she was going to deposit the bodies, this probably came to mind. It's a remote location and it doesn't appear that there are many people that walk past on a routine basis. Yes, of course, it's maybe not quite as remote as the location where Kevin Lee was found, but nevertheless, I think you could still drive here without being seen, without creating any interest in what you were doing, and have time to dispose of the bodies and make your getaway without being reported to the police. Lukasz was deposited here in the ditch first. Second body was identified as John Chapman. John Chapman was living in the same house as she was living in and had been missing. So ultimately, we're able to link these two men to Joanna Dennehy.
I don't come back here much often now because I've made a fresh life away from here. John will always remain in my heart. It feels really weird coming here, seeing the house again where it all happened. Where I can see directly over there is Joanne's room. Very community-minded people at the time when I was living here. Go in each other's houses for a cup of tea, you know, go to the shopping centre together. You know, it's that happy-go-lucky community. When she first moved in, we didn't know she was capable of murder. You don't expect that, do you? You could tell by looking at her she had problems, but not that severe. I've known John for a good few years. He went downhill when his wife died. And then when he started drinking a bit more and people used to take advantage of him. He was a sweet-natured man. He was, sorry.
Joanna Dennehy has moved into Byfield with Gary Stretch. She started making John Chapman's life a misery.
And he was scared. John was scared of her. He was saying, like, she's going to get rid of me, she don't like me, she don't like John, John's in the way, and all that, she wants to take control of the place. You know, if I'd known then what Joanne was going to do, I would have just taken John in.
And then one day, John was drunk. He'd fallen asleep on his bed, and she stabbed him to death as he slept.
John Chapman died as a consequence of stab wounds to the chest. The premises at Byfield, where we knew that Joanna Dennehy had been living, it was searched, and in the garden there was a mattress found that had blood staining to its underside.
But she said, Mark, I had to kill him because I was having a bath. He's come into the bathroom, knowing that I was in there. He was a pervert, he was looking at me. So I had to kill him.
I don't for one moment believe that's likely to be true. I think she killed John Chapman because she had a bloodlust and wanted to kill somebody, and John Chapman just happened to be there.
To wait till he was asleep, you know, to do it, stab him 5 times in the chest and once in the neck. No. He's with... No way's a good way to die, but to be knifed that many times. Miss you, John.
We, at that stage, hadn't quite established what the motive was. We needed to understand why Dennehy had committed those crimes.
I can't state what drove Joanna to make that step from committing petty crime to becoming a serial murderer. It's a significant step to make. But if you look at the facts that were gathered during the course of our investigations, and the things that Joanna said, for example, to witnesses, you know, I want my fun, I want to kill, this victim selection, and her demeanour, as described by key witnesses, the motivation is clearly thrill-seeking, and that desire and lust, I call it, to kill.
Joanna's sort of criminal career starts off with minor offences, shoplifting. I think she attacked somebody with a razor blade. A gradual progression. I mean, you know, it's all predictable. Everything is predictable. With serial killers, there's a graduation, almost like an apprenticeship. But they cross the threshold, 1 threshold, 2 threshold, then it comes to kill. And then they get a taste for it, they got away with it. Joanna Dennehy, her first kill was exactly for that. Can I do it on my own? Because I hate men. And she did. And she got a taste for it.
Joanna Dennehy also had this innate desire to control. And I think for her, the step up to using that to control, to be able to lure somebody to murder them, that added something to her in what she was doing. And of course, Gary Stretch was part of that journey. And having done it once, and then a second and a third time, it is almost like this desire to, and what is the next step? What can I do now? And in my view, we saw that clearly manifested on the streets of Hereford, where 2 victims were just randomly attacked. No prior planning, no prior connection, not lured to a location. They were just randomly attacked viciously on the street.
All she said to me was, it was easier than I thought. Because, Mark, I've always fantasised about doing it, but when I did it, it was easy. And when I did it, I wanted to do some more. She liked it.
Yeah. Am I cheering now? Yes.
Good. Will you be cheery, Joanne?
Yeah.
Even though I am strict.
Would you be cheery if you got for attempted murder and murder?
I wouldn't, but...
No, but I was just smiling.
Once the bodies were found, there was some concern as to how many bodies we're likely to be finding in remote locations. Kevin Lee's body had been found, 2 further bodies here at this location, and the obvious concern was that somebody, if these were all connected, may be responsible for further murders, and bodies were yet to be found. It was never established why Dennehy just chose men to murder. There is evidence that suggests that she was not interested in murdering women or children, particularly when she tried to murder those 2 men in West Mercia. There's lots of speculation as to why she wanted to kill men as opposed to women. Kevin Lee was found in a woman's dress and the buttocks were exposed. So it may well have been a sex game that went wrong. The body could have been put in that position to humiliate the victim. Equally, there is the possibility that he may have been aware of the murders that she committed with Lukasz and John, and that Kevin Lee at that point became somebody who presented a risk to Dennehy, and she killed him for that purpose. Kevin Lee ran a business called Quicklets in the area. Joanna Dennehy, she was a tenant at a number of his properties over time.
Kevin Lee would use any means to get rid of a tenant and move somebody else in without going through the problems with the courts.
Joanna Dennehy, she was viewed as a bit of an enforcer. She was used to go into properties where Kevin Lee wanted people evicted, or in fact where there wasn't rent paid on time and he wanted her to recover monies from people, and she was used as a little bit of an enforcer for him.
Muscles for hire for Kevin, wouldn't she? They'd go around collecting rent and debts for him. If you ain't got no money, bang, she used to beat you up.
She ended up in this relationship with Gary Stretch that was one of control and bullying vulnerable tenants who were getting behind with rent, and that petty criminality and that bullying nature and culture obviously grew and became pervasive.
I think Dennehy used men as utilities in her life, you know, to get what she wanted. And, you know, there is no doubt that, you know, her relationship with Kevin Lee brought for her some advantages. Certainly the influence she had over Stretch, again, brought for Dennehy further advantages.
She was cold towards Gary, but I don't think Gary saw that. Gary was like, I've got an attractive girl. Someone actually likes me, someone trusts me and all that. And I'm looking at Gary thinking, come on, mate. she's not absolutely no interest in you at all. You're just, like she said, you're just the driver. I swear, if Joanna Dennehy could have driven, she'd have probably done Gary in Cambridge. You just got to use Gary, mate. Simple as that. He's a big man. He could have picked you up, Joanna Dennehy, and just broken you like a twig, but he didn't. He was under a spell.
She was very, how could I put it, intimidating. You could see that she had that in her. I was a bit weary of her because, you know, she had scars all over her body. She was very flirtatious. And once she fell into that spell of hers, that's how she controlled them little puppets on a string.
She was flirting with me, touching my thighs, because, oh, Mark, I could have so much fun with you. But when she touched me, it was like being touched by a rattlesnake.
She wanted men to be influenced by her. She wanted them to do what she wanted. When you look at the video of her in custody at West Mercia Police, again, even at that stage, she's flirting with police officers, she's, you know, batting her eyelids.
I guess what we have to do is we'll open the arresting
I think what you're seeing with that behaviour with Joanna Dennehy is her ability to switch from extreme violence to, you know, almost a light-hearted mood. It's just really, really odd behaviour. And to some degree, the flirting with officers is an extension of the way in which she trying to build relationship with men to exert some control over them.
I don't need a t-shirt, Corey. This is amazing.
Looks good.
Thanks, Matt. That makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
Real sexy.
But I don't think she ever gave a second thought to the consequences of what she'd done. Moreover, she just wanted to further her reputation as somebody who was a cold-blooded killer. Properly understood the detail associated with the how, the where and the when, but the why was a question that we couldn't quite establish without Dennehy cooperating.
Joanna Dennehy was a control freak and a master manipulator. And that's not going to stop when she goes to court. She's got an audience there. She knows that everybody else expect her to plead not guilty.
Most of the detectives involved in the investigation wanted to understand why she'd committed these offences.
She'd entered a not guilty plea. We had anticipated a full trial over a number of weeks to test all the evidence.
So having identified Dennehy as a clear suspect in the murders of all three men, it was important for us to be able to put the evidence that we'd gathered to Dennehy to get her account.
In terms of the evidence, obviously we had the individual evidence of the two victims, Mr. Bereza and Mr. Rogers. As we know, Mr. Bereza spotting the star tattoo was really, really key. Forensic examination of the wounds, of the weapon that was used, of Joanna Dennehy's clothing, which would potentially have blood spattering on it.
We can now start to prepare and get ready to interview Dennehy.
My officers then went to Cambridgeshire Police Station to interview her regarding the 2 attempt murders in Hereford. No comment. The only person that ever commented on the interview out of Gary and Joanna was Gary. On the initial interview at Hereford Police Station, after which he was charged. Gary tried to minimise involvement, so he didn't go no comment, admitted to driving, the vehicle, the sequence of events he went through, but then the key moments, well, didn't see anything. Didn't know what Joanna was doing. She got out of the car, didn't see anything, she got back in the car.
Following Dennehy's interview, we were satisfied that we had sufficient evidence to put before a court for the murders of Kevin Lee, John Chapman and Lukasz Slaboszewski. And the Crown Prosecution Service authorised the charge and she was charged with their murders.
In court, Dennehy seemed very relaxed in the dock, laughing and chatting to the other defendants before the proceedings started, and that smiling, relaxed behaviour continued throughout the hearing.
People are fixated with this case because Joanna Dennehy is female. Clearly there are occasions when women are convicted of multiple murders over a period of time, but usually that's when they're working with or in support of a male perpetrator. And in these circumstances, that was somewhat reversed, in so much as Stretch was there pretty much supporting Dennehy, who was the driving force behind everything.
We had a wealth of evidence. So we had the bloodstained knife, the fast-track forensics back, we had the CCTV evidence, reconstructing the journey, the witness evidence, in particular of Mark Lloyd. It was clear that he was under duress at the time when he was in the vehicle, and he was a witness to everything that went on.
So you didn't have a choice?
I had no. I did have a choice, but I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have made it to the front door. Not a chance to know. And where was I supposed to go? And I'm thinking, if I leave these two, knowing they know that I'm going to go to the police, she might just go on a rampage.
There was the potential that during that trial process, we would establish further facts and maybe understand why Dennehy had committed those crimes.
Joanna Dennehy was a control freak and a master manipulator. And that's not going to stop when she goes to court. She's got an audience there. She knows that everybody else expect her to plead not guilty.
We had anticipated she'd entered a not guilty plea. We had anticipated a full trial over a number of weeks to test all the evidence. Joanna Dennehy stood up and said, guilty, which took us all by surprise.
And I think that was a sign of her trying to take control of the situation with her barrister, because it was completely unexpected.
That played once again into Dennehy's character, the way in which she wanted to choreograph events to build her notoriety.
That was Joanna's final act of control, that she was able to control the whole court in that way.
Gary Stretch and others actually pleaded not guilty and went to trial.
Gary Stretch was sent to prison for life, but with a minimum recommendation that he serves 19 years in custody.
She is terribly dangerous. She's so dangerous that when she first was admitted to HMP Bronzhfield, she threatened to kill Rose West. She's terrified Rose West that they shipped Rose West into Rule 43 and moved her out the next morning. She has attempted an escape. If they bring her out, she gets into the general population, the chances are she's killed somebody.
The fact is that someone like Dennehy will never be rehabilitated. She'll never reform. She will always present a danger to the public. And it's quite right in those circumstances that that's the sentence that she received.
No one knew that she was capable of what she was doing, what she'd done. No one did. If I'd known, I would have just taken John under my wings and put him in Byfield with me, because John was harmless, like Lukasz was and Kev was. Kev was a dad. He's not going to see his children grow up. Lukasz, he's not going to see his mum and dad no more. And John, he's with his wife again. So I mean, like, she's done that to 3 families.
The motivation is clearly thrill-seeking, and that desire and lust, I call it, to kill, that she developed. And that transposed itself from killing people she knew, then to random attacks on strangers in Hereford. But I don't think we'll ever find out the answers unless she chooses to tell us.
Joanna Dennehy doesn't care about anything. It's difficult to explain. This woman has got no conscience. There's nothing in her head to say sorry or I'm trying to brag about it or anything else. She does it because she loves it.
Joanna Dennehy is an individual driven by narcissism and her own desire to be notorious, and she deserves to spend the rest of her life in prison.